my friends. This is Paul. I hope you'll forgive the fan in the background. I am just really hot because it just rained and it's feeling even more hot and humid than usual. I'm sure those of you that live further south can agree with me. You might be wondering why I changed my intro, because I usually say good afternoon, good evening, or good morning, my friends. This is Paul, but I just said hello this time. And that's because you NFs guessed it already. I'm feeling sad. But I decided to take advantage of my sadness to help make a video explaining why I was sad and why the extroverted sensors among you are probably going to be baffled as to the reasoning why. So first off, let us just flat out tell the story. I have nothing to hide. In fact, by telling the story, I think that'll help emphasize the point about how strange this is even more. So what happened was I was doing an impromptu performance, and one of my friends was saying that I should have added vibrato to my voice. And so my friend sent me a link saying, hey, here's some advice from a professional music coach on how to sing vibrato. So I said, oh, okay, I'm good with taking constructive criticism. Let's try it. And within seconds, literally seconds, of hearing that guy sing, all of a sudden I got this horrendous flashback of bad things that had happened to me in the past. And I was so sad and devastated by those memories that I had trouble actually lifting up my computer and bringing it down here because I almost thought I was going to go back into depression. Now, those of you who are the extroverted sensors, which are the NJs and SPs, are probably thinking, what on earth just happened? You heard someone singing vibrato, and that made you sad. How? What the heck is going on here? Well, first let me describe how introverted sensing works. Introverted sensing is described as contrasting and comparing the past from the present. When an introverted sensor sees something, he or she is immediately going to think, how does this compare to what I've seen in the past that is similar? Now, the extroverted sensors prefer to live more in the moment. When they see something, it's as it is, or they try to think about some kind of deeper meaning. If they're the NJs, they might think, okay, what does this mean? What symbolism can we derive from it? They're not necessarily comparing it, they're analyzing it. In the case of the SPs, they're just seeing it as it is and going with it in the moment. But for those of us who are SJs, we are going to be associating something. It doesn't have to be sensory. Well, I guess by definition it kind of has to. When we hear something, see something, smell something, taste something, touch something, all the five senses, and it reminds us of a similar sensation or an identical sensation we had in the past, we will often act as though the past is happening again, and it will also bring up the emotions that we had at the time of said happening. So while it's true that when I'm reminiscing about something great that happened to me, I will usually leave out the emotional details because I prefer to focus on the sensory details. But if something like that happens, then I will absolutely remember the emotions that were associated with it. In this case, the last time I heard someone singing vibrato like that, I got immensely sad and very angry at myself. And that feeling, even though that event is long gone, several years have passed since that event, that feeling of sadness came back in me and again made it so that I almost wasn't able to make this video, that I was like putting my hands on my head and everything. The point I'm trying to make is that this is a very common occurrence for all of the SJ and NP types, probably more so the SJs because they have introverted sensing in the top two. Probably ISTJs the most because they have introverted feeling in the tertiary. So they can get what's called a dominant tertiary loop, which means that usually when you use your dominant function, your secondary function comes in to either do something about it or reflect on it, depending on whether you're an introvert or an extrovert. So to give an example, an ESFP's dominant function, extroverted sensing, is going to make them live in the moment. Their introverted feeling is going to make them ask, is living in the moment going along with my values and emotions? But in the case of the introverted types, you might take something like, well, we'll use my type. An ISTJ might think about something in the past or something that's proven familiar, and their extroverted thinking is going to say, how can we get something done with those past experiences? But if a person is insanely sad or insanely stressed, sometimes they can skip the secondary function and jump straight from the dominant to the tertiary. So I don't really know how to describe this for all of the types, but I know for ISTJs, they get caught in this endless cycle, for lack of better words, of extreme emotions, and then the introverted feeling comes in and they take it all on themselves, wondering where they went wrong. How could they have messed up? And then they get into this self-loathing type of mindset. And in this particular case, I really don't want to say the memory again because it was painful enough recalling it the first time, but I do remember very vividly all those years ago, I think it was over 10 years ago, I was very sad and I was regretting the actions that I took in that moment, and I was thinking that I was a failure and that I should get in trouble, all that terrible stuff. All that just from a guy singing vibrato. And it got me to think that maybe that's why I was so sad all the times that I've heard my sister-in-law sing, is not because she's a bad singer, but because she reminded me of someone in my past that was singing vibrato that made me think such terrible things. Now, they say that introverted sensing is the most abstract of all the functions, which is really weird to say out loud because ISTJs are some of the most straightforward of all the types, second probably only to the ISTP. When they say something, they mean it. They are very direct and straightforward with their communication, but yet their dominant function is considered the most abstract, so that types that don't have it in their function stack are bewildered by it, especially the ENFJs and the ENTJs, because for them, introverted sensing is in their blind spot. So for example, there's a YouTuber named Megan Lavoda. I think she's changed her name by now, but I'm not sure what her new name is. She's an ENFJ, and she does videos about Myers-Briggs. And there was one time that she was talking about introverted sensing, and she just broke character and just said, what the heck is with those introverted sensors? How the heck can they see or touch or hear something and it makes them sad? How? There's nothing that's going on that's making them sad or angry, but somehow it associates them with something in the past. And I can only imagine how the INFJs and INTJs feel with them having introverted sensing in the not in the inferior, in the eighth, their demon function. How they must be completely bamboozled by all of this, or possibly even frustrated. I imagine when my friend reads that email, she's going to be like, say what? Why the heck are you getting so worked up over something that happened over 10 years ago? And I have made several videos describing introverted sensing, so a lot of this may be redundant, so I'll try to sum it up in a sentence or two. ISTJs are essentially time travelers, and I'd like to think ISFJs are too. When we experience something familiar, it is as though the moment is repeating itself to us, and we are usually able to recall all of the details, both emotional and physical. Whereas when there's not a heavy emotion associated with it, we're going to be more detail-oriented. I might talk about the carpet when I go somewhere, but if something was like really impacting me strongly, then I'm going to remember the emotion behind it. So for example, when I went on the vacation to go visit Isabel this year, and she brought along her sister and I brought along her travel buddy, and there were 2 points that I can remember where we had a group hug. And most people, when they experience a group hug, are probably thinking, oh, this feels so great. Or unless if you don't like hugs and you're like, oh, I'm feeling so claustrophobic. But for people that like hugs, they're probably thinking in the moment, hey, this is great. I love being hugged. I love feeling accepted. What was going through my head? The time that I was hugged by 12 girls 14 years ago. It was as though time was repeating itself. And I could very vividly recall how I was feeling then, and then I compared and contrasted it with what was happening then, and how different these 3 girls in 2024 were different than the 12 girls in 2010. And it's not really something that we choose to do. It's something that just happens within seconds. And you could say that about all the dominant functions. You take INTJs, they're just naturally going to think ahead about the future, and they're going to naturally think about the deeper meaning behind things without trying to. In the same way, ISTJs and ISFJs are going to be thinking about what in the past was familiar to what was right in front of them within seconds. They're not going to actively say, hey, I am going to compare and contrast. No, it just happens. But what can we do about it? I don't know. If I knew what I was doing about it, I wouldn't be making this video. I hope I can be the first person on YouTube to be able to adequately explain what's going on from the perspective of someone that has it, and give you guys advice on maybe how to avoid it. Maybe advice for the NJ and SP types to be more sympathetic. I don't know what I'm accomplishing. I wanted to make this video in the moment because I thought it would be relevant and that I could be like having fresh experiences. And advice that I would be giving to hypothetically someone watching this video is be delicate with the past. If something happened to an ISTJ or ISFJ in the past that brought about a significant emotion, don't just dismiss it as, oh, it was in the past, move on. That is going to make them very upset, because to them, they kind of can't move on. Like, the example that I give to my mom, who is absolutely an extroverted sensor, she doesn't understand what it means to dwell in the past, because for her, introverted sensing would be in the critic function. So she's either an ISTP or an ISFP. I can't figure out which one just yet. But yeah, she's very critical of like people that are dwelling on the past and living in memories. She's just like, I'm just in the moment. I don't think about that kind of stuff. Whereas for me, I've tried. I have tried to put memories out of my mind. And some of them just will not go away. And I think that's the case with everyone who's had traumatic happenings. But for me, it doesn't necessarily have to be traumatic to stick in my mind. Honestly, this vibrato thing that happened over 10 years ago, I think it was 11 years ago, if I'm being precise. Like, I remember where I was sitting. I remember the building I was in. I vaguely remember the people around me, but not very much, because from what Linda Barron says, people with introverted sensing are going to focus more on themselves than they are on other people. It was not a traumatic memory. It was, I really don't want to go into it, but it was a very innocent mistake that I made. Very innocent. Nothing that could get me in trouble or in jail or anything like that. But I overreacted when I made that mistake and thought of all of the horrible possibilities of what could go wrong. I guess at the time, I kind of thought nothing of it. I thought I would learn from my mistakes and move on. And for about 10 years, I was fine. And then this happened. And it came all back in an instant. And now I'm filled with regret again for the mistake that I made. And I'm thinking about all of the things I did wrong. And, well, that just reminded me of another memory in which I made a mistake. And now I'm hoping that I didn't cause terrible damage. Now, normally an ISTJ is not this melodramatic. We have extroverted thinking. So we would just think, okay, how do we get something done with this? Well, I guess I have high enough extroverted thinking that I said, let's make a video. Let's get something done. If I'm going to be sad, let's do something about it. And so I would say that this video is me doing something about it. Me saying, okay, let's use this as a learning opportunity. Don't just dwell in my sadness. Teach people about it. Teach those SP and NJ types to be delicate when it comes to talking about the past. Validate the ISTJ's emotions by saying, hey, you're not wrong for feeling that way. And I know that you're thinking that the past is happening again, but it is not. You are a better person than you were 10 years ago. And you have improved. You have made mistakes like anyone else. Your mistakes aren't necessarily worse than anyone else's mistakes. It's the human experience. I'm thinking about what I would want someone to say to me. So maybe you're different. Maybe if you're an ISTJ watching this, you need different advice. But that's what I would want someone to say to me. I'd also want a hug, and I'd also want to have permission to cry, because I don't really cry too often. I try to, but I just can't seem to be able to do it. From what I've heard, that's pretty common of TJ types, that oftentimes what they feel on the inside is not able to be replicated on the outside, as evidenced by the fact that I'm smiling and laughing during this take, but inwardly I'm feeling dreadful and wish that I could just pound the floor and scream, but yet I'm presenting a happy face to you guys. This went on a lot longer than I thought. I hope that the length ends up helping you guys, because I wanted to be as thorough as possible in explaining this very abstract cognitive function. So if you're an ISTJ or an ISFJ watching this, make sure that you have good friends. That's how I get through a lot of my terrible memories. I don't have a lot of good things to say about my ex-girlfriend, but one good thing that she did that, to my knowledge, not really any of my other female friends have been able to quite replicate the way she did, is she gave me permission to be a failure. She would often say things, I don't remember exactly how she said it, but the way she said it is so uniquely her. It's one of the only things that I wish, that I regret breaking up with her for, is that she would say stuff like, "Hey Paul, you made a mistake and I'm okay with that. You are not a failure and you are a very good person. And if you make a mistake, it's not the end of the world." Again, the way she said it, because I'm sure there have been other girls that have come along since then that have worded things better and have not done the things that my ex did. But being with her has really helped me out a lot with being able to accept my mistakes. And she, I'm pretty sure she's an ENFP, so she would have introverted sensing in the inferior. So she would kind of get what I'm talking about. You know, she did have her moments where she would get really upset if I reminded her of the past. So I guess in that sense, I'm grateful that we had the mutual function stack so that we could, like, I guess, understand each other a little bit better. And if you're an SP or an NJ watching this, then the advice I give to you is try to be like my ex. But, like, not in all the bad things that she did, but in the way that she presented the advice. ISTJs think of everything in terms of contracts and obligations and duty. So if you're able to appeal to their dutiful side, like say, "Hey Paul, you are contractually obligated to follow through with this stuff even if it makes you sad," and that'll cancel out the failure in the past by doing something good now. I don't think it's going to make me change my mind about the decision I just made to one of my friends. But generally speaking, if you really want me to do something, a contract is the best way to do it. Just don't manipulate me into signing the contract, then I'm going to be very mad at you. But generally speaking, my sense of duty and my sense of loyalty is going to overshadow any other emotions that I have. Alright, I've gone on long enough. Time for me to actually, like, wallow in my sadness for a bit, because, you know, they say it's good to feel it out. Don't just suppress your emotions, because that can lead to chest pains, which I had in the past about 10 years ago, and that was terrible. So let's not have that again. I hope you all enjoyed this video, or at least felt informed by it. Let me know down in the comment section if you have introverted sensing in your function stack and what was going through your head when you were hearing this. If you have introverted sensing, was my advice something that you'd want to hear? If you don't, do you think it's good advice for people that you know in your life that do have introverted sensing? Either way, let me know. Most of my comment section lately has been full of very unrelated stuff that have nothing to do with the videos I'm posting, so I hope your comments will actually be relevant. And until the next time, remember to keep the faith, stay epic, and God bless. Bye!